All right, Casey. Well, the other big AI news this week happened at Google I/O, the company's annual developer conference, which was held on Tuesday in Mountain View. I couldn't make it this year, but you went and attended, and tell me what it was like.
Well, once again, the heavy burden of doing the actual reporting on this podcast falls to me, but I was only too happy to do it, Kevin, so we'd have some fun things to talk about. But I knew you would be sad to miss it, so I went ahead and I got you the official 2024 Google I/O tote bag.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah. Now, if you're just listening to the podcast, you should know Kevin just accepted the tote bag in flagrant violation of the New York Times ethics policy, and we do have that captured on video. But listen, Kevin,
I think I can accept gifts as long as they're not worth more than $25.
That's definitely
the policy.
That definitely isn't. It's made out of publications that Google killed last year. So, anyways, we had a great time.
Well, thank you for the gift. I will put it in my tote bag of tote bags.
Okay, great. Well, listen, we had a good time down there. Now, I will say, I do want to tell this story, and the story makes me look annoying, but I just got to get it off my chest anyway. It actually sucked getting into Google I/O this year. I've never had a problem getting into Google I/O before. I've been going for more than 10 years. And yet, this time, there was something now maybe this has been true in previous years, but I did not notice it until this time. They had Live Nation managing this event, okay?
Wow.
And I think that's just because monopolies love monopolies, and so they want to make sure that they sort of help each other out. And so anyway, there's this one entrance that the press has always been able to use. And so I went to use it this time around, and they were like, basically, scram, kid, go wait in a line with everyone else. And I said, okay, fine. And I stand in 15 minutes in this other line, with everyone else. And then finally, a man with a little pedal says, oh, by the way, if you're in the press line, you should go to that other entrance, which was the first place that I went.
Oh, thank God. I was worried you were going to have to wait in a line for 15 minutes with the hoi polloi.
I only got through half the line.
Thank God you got your VIP pass that let you cut the line.
So listen to this. So then I get back to the press entrance. I say, hi, I'm the press. They just told me it was the press entrance. And the guy goes, no, you can't use this entrance. And Kevin, I had to raise my voice. I said, I've literally just been told to come here. And then finally, the guy throws his hands up and it's like, well, okay, if you're going to make a whole thing about it, then just use the entrance.
Wow.
So yeah, so I got in there. By that time,
wow, this guy a podcast. He starts acting like a diva. All of a sudden, it's wait in this line? Do you know who I am?
Listen, all I wanted to do was find out how this company is about to destroy my business. And the very least they could do was let me into here.
Did you say Google me?
I did not say Google me.
I'm shocked. It's very effective around there.
All right. So, listen.
So set the scene.
It's a developer conference. It's at the Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View. It was a balmy day, sort of really California, showing off its best side. And in the morning, they have a big keynote where for 2 hours, Google says, here are all of the things that we have been working on that we're planning to release in the next year that we can fit into a 2-hour presentation. And, as you probably guessed, they had a lot to say.
Yeah. So let's go through some of what they announced on Tuesday. They announced a new AI video generation tool called VO, a new AI image generation tool called Imagine 3. They also announced another version of their Gemini flagship AI model called Gemini 1.5 Flash, which is optimized to be fast and cost efficient. And they announced a version of Gemini 1.5 Pro. Is it Gemini Pro 1.5 or Gemini 1.5 Pro?
That's none of my business. There was so much word salad at this event, and I'm just going to see if any of it ever shows up in my life ever again. That's my approach with everything you just said.
Right. So they announced a larger context window that will allow developers to try 2 million tokens in their context window.
Now, that's actually a big deal.
Why?
Okay, so if you're not familiar with what a context window is, it's basically how much of your stuff can you bring to the AI to have it look at. Why does this matter? Well, maybe you're a graduate student and you have a bunch of papers that are PDFs and you want an AI to help you summarize them, to ask questions of them. Well, now all of a sudden, instead of maybe just uploading one PDF, with 2 million tokens, you'll be able to upload, like thousands of pages
entire
potentially.
Books.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, we should say that the 2 million token window, that is available only in preview. But if you pay Google $20 a month for their little Gemini Advanced thing, you now have up to 1 million tokens, and that is much bigger. So that's important.
Yeah. So that's some of their AI announcements. But I want to spend most of our time right now talking about something else that Google announced, which is that Google is now bringing generative AI answers directly into its core search engine. So starting this week, hundreds of millions of Google users in the US will start seeing a feature called AI Overviews. This is a feature that used to be called Search Generative Experience when Google was sort of testing it out.
Another huge win for the Google branding team. Search Generative Experience.
Right. So this is a feature that basically when you go to Google and you search for something, Google will generate an AI summary that will live in the search results page above the traditional search links. This feature has been rolling out gradually, but they said that as of this week, hundreds of millions of users in the US will see it, and by the end of the year, it will reach over 1 billion users. Yeah. So what do these AI overviews actually look like?
Well, so there's what they look like today, and there's what's coming. What do they look like today? It is a box on top of search. It's some bullet points, essentially a web page within a web page that summarizes the topic for whatever that you've been looking for. But Google's plans are much more ambitious. They showed off a ton of examples. For example, if you move to a city, you can just sort of say that to Google and you'll get an AI overview that says, here's everything that you might be interested in now that you move to a new city. We'll help you find a dog walker. We'll help you find a dry cleaner. Maybe you want to plan an anniversary in Dallas. It will say, well, here are some great spots for an anniversary dinner. And based on the time of year, we're going to show you a place with a roof deck because it's warm outside, right? Google executives love to talk about travel. Can I just tell you my quick joke about every tech demo?
Yes.
This is my impression of every tech demo. Okay, ready? I love to visit Antarctica for lunch with my wife, but there's only one problem. Where am I going to get a helicopter? That's every tech demo I've ever seen.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's like when I'm looking to furnish my vacation house in Tahoe, but the only place with the custom boar's head statues is in Zanzibar.
That's right.
How can I arrange 2-day shipping? It's ridiculous.
Exactly. So they had a travel example, which was basically like, I'm planning this trip abroad, and with this this AI tool, it'll say, okay, well, we know what your flight times are because we read it in your Gmail, and based on that, we're going to sort of have you do this dinner the first night that you arrive, and then we'll plan a walking tour for the next day, and they'll put together the whole itinerary for you, or they'll plan a whole meal plan for you. So this stuff is starting pretty small and frankly boring, but the vision here is this stuff is going to be doing planning for you. This thing is an AI assistant that lives within Google now, that is doing research projects for you, and that pretty soon is probably going to be booking travel for you.
Yeah. And I knew that this had been announced at I.O. because my phone started blowing up with texts from other journalists, people who work in the media industry, that mostly said some variation of, we are so screwed.
Yeah.
And I think we should just explain a little bit why the online media business is freaking out about this change, because I don't think it's totally obvious unless you work in our industry.
Yeah, well, so much of the way that the internet is funded depends on people visiting individual web pages. Those web pages have ads on them. A lot of those ads served by Google, by the way. They also, as people visit those web pages, publications, publishers, businesses have a chance to get you to sign up for a newsletter, maybe subscribe to something. So Google is this massive funnel that winds up being the economic engine of the entire web. And the way that it works is people Google things and they see links and they click on the links, right? And this has been the state of affairs for so long now that I think people take it for granted. Once you take an AI and you start to just summarize those links and essentially tell people you don't have to visit websites anymore, all of a sudden that thing starts to break down. There was this phrase that they used a couple times at the keynote, Kevin. They said, let Google do the Googling for you. And it struck me so hard because the implication there is that being on the web is a chore, and the Google of the future is not going to take you to the web. Google is going to give you everything you need within Google itself.
Yeah, that struck me too. And they also talked about sort of taking the legwork out of search. And as they were saying that, I was thinking, like, that legwork has funded basically the entire digital media. I mean, I don't want to overstate things. Google is not everything, but it is by far the biggest supplier of traffic to many digital publications. So Google executives have obviously anticipated that publishers might freak out about this change, and they sort of had some responses ready. They said, in our tests, we've found that users who saw these AI overviews tended to conduct more searches and visit a more diverse set of websites. They also said that the links that appear in these AI overviews, because there's a little like section at the bottom of the overview where you can go to click on things to learn more. They said that those links got more clicks than the sort of traditional search links below them. And Liz Reed, the vice president of search at Google, said on Tuesday that the company would, quote, continue to focus on sending valuable traffic to publishers and creators. But I think it's fair to say that publishers are skeptical.
Well, and she said we're going to send valuable traffic. She didn't say we're going to send more traffic, because guess what? They're not going to. And when analysts look at this, they're predicting somewhere between 20 to 40% of Google search traffic is at stake here. And I think it's fair to say that most publishers do not have a plan for what happens if they lose 40% of their traffic in a year.
Yeah, that's clearly the risk here, is that all of this traffic will just evaporate. I also read a good post on Search Engine Land, which is a good website that covers the search industry.
And one of my favorite theme parks.
They were basically talking about how the problem for publishers here is not just that they might see their overall traffic decline, but that they can't really do anything about it. You know, with other chatbots, other AI experiences, publishers can say opt out. They can block the crawler for ChatGPT or Claude from accessing their site if they don't want those products to be able to summarize what they find on their websites. But with Google, because their crawler also includes because their technology also crawls for the search index, there's no way right now to decouple those things. You can't be a publisher and say, I don't want my content to appear in these AI overview summaries. I only want to be listed on regular search results in Google. You have to kind of say yes or no to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think overall, if you are a publisher that derives a big portion of your traffic from Google, this is a big deal for you. This is the big one. I would be pulling the fire alarm.
Yeah, it is absolutely time. But, you know, Kevin, at the same time, I have to say, in some ways, we had to know this was coming. You know, I've been writing about Google for more than 10 years now. And you go back a decade, and they were talking about Google as the Star Trek computer. This is their vision. You know, if you've seen Star Trek, Captain Kirk or whoever will just say, computer, and then, is able to ask the question, and then they can fire the photon torpedoes or whatever. And that is a world where, the computer was not saying, and actually I got that fact from the New York Times, right? And here's a link.
Here's the Wirecutter's favorite photon torpedoes.
Right? The sci-fi vision of this has always been all of the inputs, all of the labor is abstracted away, and you just have this perfect assistant. So they've told us that this is what they were building. I think it just seemed so fantastical for so long that publishers, and by the way, not just publishers, anybody else who depends on Google traffic helping people discover their business, which is a lot of people, right? It was so easy for those folks to just dismiss that. But the point of what we're saying today is the moment is here. The Star Trek computer is coming into view, and people really do need to have a new plan.
Yeah. Is there anything that publishers can do at this point to sort of keep their Google traffic from falling off a cliff or to adapt to these new AI overviews?
I think the only thing that works, and it's really hard, but you have to build a direct connection with an audience or with a customer base if you're a different kind of business, right? People have to think of you independently, and you have to have some way of maintaining a connection with them. So, this is why email newsletters have become such a hot commodity in the publisher world, right? Because it allows us to sidestep the need for you to, look up a piece of information in order to find it. Instead, someone will just kind of send it to you. So, I think podcasts are another thing, frankly, right? Because we don't rely on Google search really for people to find the podcast. It just gets delivered to them in a feed once they become subscribers. So these are the kinds of things that I think more publishers need to be thinking about. But even then, Kevin, the scale of the businesses is going to decline because in its heyday, Google really would send millions and millions of visits to website. And in a world where that's about to decline, the size of the audience that you can build is smaller, which means that the staff that you can afford to pay gets much smaller. So I just think that we are going to be living in the fallout of this for a really long time. And I got to say, man, I was emotional yesterday in a way that I was not proud of. And, not that I was crying at Google I/O, but I just felt really out of sorts. Within the past 48 hours of this recording this, I have one friend who got laid off from their media job, and I had two other friends who are currently employed in media jobs who told me that they're looking for other jobs right now. And in every case, the answer is the same. The money just isn't there the way that they all thought it would be, right? And so that's just, my story, past 48 hours, 3 people looking to leave. We already, we could name the publications that have shut down in the past year. There are more that are going to shut down in this year. And so I understand, maybe this just sounds like two reporters navel-gazing and, maybe we're spending too much time on this. But what I'm telling you is the thing that is happening to the media businesses is going to happen to the other businesses. It turns out that in a world where everything is online, how people find stuff, how they discover new businesses, that matters a lot. And when all of that is about to be hidden away behind some black box algorithm that summarizes what it thinks is the best thing based on whatever and who knows, I truly do not think people are prepared for this world.
Yeah, and I think Google obviously has reasons for wanting to evolve its search engine in this way. I also think it's a very risky move for them for a few reasons. One is, as we know, these AI overviews can get things wrong. They can be untrustworthy. They can be erratic. I saw there was a screenshot going around the other day on social media where someone asked Google, what are some food names that end with And Google's experimental AI overview said, here are some fruit names that end with Appleum, bananaum, strawberryum, tomatum, and coconut. And that's a funny example, but I think there are going to be a lot of examples of these AI overviews, at least in their early days, just getting things wrong. I do think that will start to erode trust in Google over time.
I mean, I think that is possible, but I would not count on it because there are mistakes on all the web pages that people are visiting to, and I'm not sure how much it just matters in the end.
Yeah. I think there's also a business risk here, too. I mean, Google, it does make the vast majority of its money from showing ads right there on the search results page. And it remains to be seen whether they can sort of monetize these AI overviews as effectively as their traditional search results. By the way, they also make a lot of money showing ads on third-party websites. Their Google ad network is a big part of their business, tens of billions of dollars a year. If all of those web pages suddenly have to close up because they're not getting any traffic from Google anymore, then that part of Google's ad business has to shrink as well.
So that is totally true. But keep in mind, Kevin, it is Google that has its fingers on the knobs. Google is the one in control here. It gets to decide how fast or slow it moves in a case like this. If it does something that dramatically changes something in a way it doesn't like, it can always edge that back. The important thing is it is the one in the driver's seat now for what the future of the web looks like. And what they are telling us is Google is just going to keep more and more of the median internet experience to itself within its own walled garden.
Yeah. Do you find any reasons for optimism in what you heard this week at I.O.?
Well, I was so desperate for optimism that I texted a tech executive, who I have some of these back channel conversations with. And this is an executive who I think it's fair to say generally thinks that I over-rotate on being, concerned and a worrier, because, you talk to people in tech, they're mostly just optimistic about everything. They think everything is going to be fine for everyone. Of course, they also live in mansions. But anyway, this person said to me that essentially people still want novel content and experiences on the web. They want to have shared experiences with their friends. They want real relationships, right, with publications, with writers. And so if you are the kind of media business or you're the kind of journalist that does have an authentic audience, that you are doing a really good job for, that you're doing something novel, you're doing something really smart, you might wind up being in a better position coming out of all of this. Because as much as I love the media, it is also true that there's a lot of garbage in our business. And there are a lot of unscrupulous publishers that are publishing lists of, quote, the best vacuum that haven't tested a single vacuum in their entire life, but they figure there's some upside in getting some of that affiliate revenue. So if you want an optimistic case, it is that Google will sort of cause all of those bad actors to wash out, and it will leave a few brave, proud publishers that are doing honest work standing to reap more of the benefits.
Yeah. I think my reason for optimism here is that I actually do think that it is in Google's long-term self-interest for there to be a vibrant and healthy internet. I think that if Google starts sort of just aggregating and summarizing the internet and spoon feeding it to people through these AI overviews, I think that'll work fine for a while. And then I think they will start to see one website close and 10 websites close and 100 websites close. And within a couple of years, you're looking at just a very diminished internet. And Google in that world is not going to have, what is its AI going to crawl and summarize if there are no websites left? So I just think that, we will end up in a world where all of the valuable information on the internet is sort of hidden behind paywalls and subscription publications, maybe newsletters and podcasts. And you will just see sort of an impoverished Google that is out there scraping as hard as it can, trying to summarize what it finds and not coming up with much.
Yeah. Well, I do think that is a possibility. I also think Google will just get increasingly good. I was having this discussion with friends last night of essentially this exact thing. Where is Google going to find the information anymore? And, you might think of one example. Well, let's say you go to Paris and you want to know what's the best bakery. Well, today I would rely on a travel writer who has been there and been there recently, right? Because, the best bakery from in 2024 might not be the best bakery in 2020. And we started talking about, it's Google could actually just kind of look at the foot traffic in all of the bakeries in Paris and say this one is the most popular. And that is not actually going to require there to be a healthy web feeding it that information, right? These companies collect so much data about us, and they are going to come up with so many more novel ways to use it that I really do wonder if maybe we aren't flattering ourselves when we tell ourselves that they need us.
I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong. I've never hoped for anything more.
But I do. I think this is sort of the flip side of AI vertigo, this feeling of wow, the future is coming, is I don't know that our institutions, including our media institutions, understand the gravity of what happened this week at Google, which was that they did essentially declare that we are moving into a very different era of the internet.
We have talked on this show for more than a year now about automation, AI coming for jobs. It has seemed like something on a kind of medium to distant horizon. But I do think that at I.O. this week, we saw the beginning of an arrival of something like that. And again, it is starting in the media, but it is not going to stop there.
Can I just say one more thing before we close the segment? Because I got a little emotional watching Google I.O., the keynote yesterday, too. I got a little emotional watching this announcement, too, for maybe some similar reasons as you. But my emotion was I just feel like I'm being gaslit here. Publishers, people who work in online media have known that Google has plans to shove generative AI into search results for years. We talked to the CEO of Perplexity a few months ago, who basically told us, yes, if we do start generating these AI summaries of search results, people will click on less news. And I actually admired that he was honest about that. Google is not being honest about this. They are telling people we are still committed to sending traffic to publishers. People are not going to stop clicking on links just because they have these AI summaries above their search results. And I really just wish that someone at Google would come out and say, yes, your traffic is going to fall off a cliff. But here's why we think it's important anyway. But instead, they are trying to signal to users that this is going to be a good and useful thing. They are trying to make publishers feel less scared. And frankly, it just felt like it felt like attending a funeral disguised as a wedding.
Yeah, and this actually is the reason that we need media to exist in this world, is because we will try to tell you the truth about something. We will try to go beyond our own narrow self-interest and tell you what's going on this planet.
It drives me insane. Just tell me we're going to, basically destroy the foundations of the open internet.
No, I felt exactly the same way.
How was the food?
Not great. My context window is full, Kevin, and we will have to return to this subject another time.
Yes, I think we will have plenty more opportunities to revisit this subject.
And you can find us podcasting under an old bridge on the abandoned railroad tracks.
What's your post-media plan for when all the Google traffic, are you going to become a farmer if the digital media dies?
I'm getting really into TV and VCR repair.
I think there's a bright future in that.
Yeah. Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.